Chambers, you're recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, I strenuously oppose this raid on the general fund. The amount that will be siphoned from the general fund as a result of this bill will be $10 million annually. $9,900,000 to be more precise, but I may as well say $10 million for ease of reference. We are going to be processing spending bills. This money currently goes into the general fund. The Highway Trust Fund has been like a sacred cow around here, and it gets whatever it desires most of the time. I have a kill motion on this bill, and I'm going to carry it through. This ought not to be done. And those people who have spending bills need to consider it. The last time we were on it, Senator Nankis made a reference to her beloved University of Nebraska. The University of Nebraska wants some more money. Where does the university's money come from if it's going to be appropriated by the legislature? Not the Highway Trust Fund, from the general fund. This is $10 million less that will be available. And I know that the partial year that the first part of this bill will affect won't be the full $10 million. It'll be $3-point-something million. Then $10 million thereafter, and maybe more depending on how many of these vehicles are leased or if there's a change upward in a tax rate. I do not think that the Highway Trust Fund should be replenished, should be freshened by taking funds that currently go into the general fund. Perhaps a majority of my colleagues disagree with me, in which case this raid will occur. But when your bill comes up where money is to be spent and you hear this plaint, there's not enough money. You think back to this day when you were willing to take $10 million off the table. This is not the way the Highway Trust Fund ought to be replenished. Senator Hudkins the other day tried to get some money that would be made available as a result of an increased tax on snuff that I was able to add to that bill. They are seeking any and every means to get more money to put into the trust fund and that highway allocation fund. If you look at those who supported this bill, they're the ones who feel they will get some of this siphoned money from the general fund without having to go before the Appropriations Committee to say that there will be more money somehow made available to counties or whatever they're talking about. You know the general contractors want it because their business is building roads. If it's a road from nowhere to nowhere else, they'll build it if the money is there. There was a movie that said, build it and they will come. By analogy, or appropriating that notion, pay them and they'll build it. They don't care where. You say you want a highway bed that's wavy like a river, we'll build that highway bed.
1 minute.
Then you want the road surface that's on top of it to be wavy like that bed, we'll build it. You want it to have a hairpin turn so sharp that you can't negotiate it on a bicycle pumping 2 miles an hour, you pay us, we'll build it. Do you want it to go uphill at a 45-degree angle? You got the cash? Yeah, we got it. We'll build it. And that is the irresponsible action that this body is going to take if they pass LB 305. They will be doing something just about that irresponsible. This is not a part of the budgeting process. This is a raid on the general fund, and I'm opposed to it. Thank you, Mr. President. Let me tell you all something I did when some of you were not here, and some of you who may have been here didn't even pay attention to it. I looked at the telephone service that is not available in the rural areas. I don't believe in putting surtaxes on phone bills or hidden taxes. But I did one, and you know why? To help the rural areas. No rural senator created that universal fund where people in the urban areas subsidized by us paying more on our phone bill, the providing of telephone service to the rural areas. I did it. It was my amendment. I fought for it, and I persuaded the legislature to accept it. But it is ridiculous to say that you have a few houses out there, because that's where people chose to live. So the state is obliged to build a road. The road building program of this state should be pursuant to a comprehensive plan that is based in rationality. Not this notion that I'm going to move out there and they got to build a road. And not everything that people want will be available. The governor's talking about cutting taxes. So, on the one hand, cut the taxes, then on the other, raid the treasury so you can provide a service which cannot be justified. And when you hear these vague, unconnected arguments about economic development, that has become the abracadabra in the legislature, which is designed to work magic for a proposal that has no merit, that is unjustified, that deliberative, responsible lawmakers would not go for. You think the contractors are interested in economic development other than fattening their own pockets? If these cities and other political subdivisions come in here, why do they ask the state to take the burden off them and provide additional revenue to the localities? Because they don't want to do the taxing that they have the authority to do. They want to tell the state, give us local control, but you pay for it. Let the senators raise more money through the taxing power of the state and make it available to these local taxing entities. Then those politicians can say, we lowered your sales tax. We did it. They don't say that they managed to persuade inattentive or foolish state legislators to abdicate our responsibility as state lawmakers in order to give a flowery bed of ease to the politicians at the local level. We all know that whether a city tax is levied, a county, a school district, and all these other taxing authorities, the same people are being taxed. It's a matter of which entity is going to take the rap. Put the responsibility on those local politicians. In the meanwhile, as a state lawmaker, I am interested in the raising of tax revenue for the state, the expenditure of that revenue, and protecting the general fund from being raided. All somebody has to do is come in here and say, we got chuck holes in the streets in our town, so take some money from the general fund and fix the chuck holes. We got some people who decided to move way to the top of the hill so they can look down on everybody else, but they don't have a road to get there, and in the wintertime, gravel is not good enough, so we want to build a road up there and give them what they've got in the cities. And foolish legislators are supposed to say, okay, how should we do it? Well, we'll raid the treasury. We will raid the general fund. You cannot, from this legislative position, tap into any tax funds raised by the city. If they have what they might call a rainy day fund, a sinking fund, or whatever they call it, the legislature cannot say, this is money just laying there, so we are going to take it. No, that's not going to be done. You think a county is going to give some of its money to the city and vice versa, the city giving something to the county because they want to, and the county politicians don't want to bear the responsibility of raising the money needed? No. So what do? They say, we got 48 fools down there. Why 48? Because we know Chambers is not going for this. But the others are afraid to stand against it. Or they're just inattentive and don't care. Well, I'll tell you this, brothers, sisters, friends, enemies, and neutrals. When I'm out of here in a year, if the Supreme Court does not overturn term limits, you all won't have to listen to this. The general contractors can come in here and say, we want to take another $20 million from general fund and put it into the highway trust fund, and that will be done. These things that I stand against are not going to be resisted. But while I am here, join me in resisting them and let the blame fall on me. I will assume it. I will accept it. You know why you have decent furniture? Because I was on a subcommittee of the executive board, and I had grown tired of what we had in our offices. There was mismatched embarrassment. They had dinette chairs, folding chairs. Some of them were made out of wood. They had desks, which if a woman or a man in nice clothing, my jeans, it wouldn't matter, they're tough, would happen to walk too close to that desk, say she had on a knit skirt. By the time she got to the door, you think she's doing a strip tease because her skirt got caught on her thread, and as she walked, it unraveled. And she said, good God Almighty, what's going on around here? Then somebody else would come in Senator Carlson's office, and they're casual. So they lean on the desk, and it shifts the way that Senator Carlson is leaning. So they say, excuse me, Senator, could you move? And he moved. Then they straighten the desk up. And it doesn't match anything in that office. Up here on these walls, that rain, when it came, that water would run down those walls. And I would try to embarrass the senators. I say, you got thick drapes up there so nobody will see how this building is being damaged. There is no concern for this building. There is no respect for it. And I was on that committee, and some of the people, even on the subcommittee, said, well, we can't do some of these things because it'll cost too much money. I said, that's why I'm the chairman of the subcommittee. I'm the one who's doing it. I wanted decent leather chairs in those hearing rooms. You all who are here now have no idea what happened. They had some chairs with real tall backs and a roll on the top. Well, if you were foolish enough to lean back so your head was on that roll, the next thing you know, your feet were straight up in the air because the chair would tip over. Now, although it was funny, it was not what should happen to a state legislator, even those with whom I had differences. So we spent maybe $1,400 per chair. One of the senators even mentioned that there was a person in, and I won't give the gender of the senator, his or her neighborhood, who had a furniture shop in his or her garage. And I said, so you're saying that we should let somebody in his or her backyard build the chairs for, well, yes, Senator Chambers, they'd be much cheaper. I said, I want some chairs that'll be here after I'm gone, no matter how long I stay here. So you have decent leather chairs in those hearing rooms. You have desks and furniture of which you need not be ashamed. That's because you weren't here to see it, and there was somebody like me who went against all those decades of neglect and ignoring what ought to be done here. So I'm not just standing up here all of a sudden saying, I don't want the general fund rated for this purpose. I have tried to see that we husband the money, the resources of this state, in such a way that we will be considered prudent stewards. But that didn't mean that the legislature would travel cheap and in a way that embarrassed not only the senator, but his or her constituents if they happen to come into that room. So that brings me back to this. I'm going to resist this raid on the general fund. It's in keeping with my philosophy as a state senator. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members of the legislature, my dispute is not with Senator Fisher or even Senator Fisher's committee or even these people who are going to profit from this who came here supporting the bill. If you got a sucker, who was that guy who was the one who lived a long time ago? He said, there's one born every minute. And also, if you find the sucker, bump his head. Well, the legislature is where the suckers are located, and this bill is to bump your heads. Senator Fisher said 34 people voted for the bill. One of the famous commercials, or infamous ones, I don't remember the product, said, so many and so many people have bought this product and that many people can't be wrong. Well, yes, they can. Why do you think we have 3 stages of debate instead of 1? What you don't catch with the first thought, you can catch with the middle thought, which is select file. If you miss it with the first thought and the second thought, you can catch it with an afterthought on final reading. And there are bills which have failed on final reading. You think when I'm opposed to this bill, and I opposed it on general file, by the way, that just because 34 people voted in a way which I consider mistaken, that's going to hush me up and let me support something that is a raid on the general fund? And you all are going to go along with it? Some of you who are new see distances and time differently from the way those things are viewed by somebody such as myself. I see the legislative session as a continuum, but with this difference, not in a linear way, but I see every part of it as being here right now. Right now. And I can see the end from the beginning. And I can predict at the beginning how people are going to be scrambling around here at the end. The new people aren't aware of that. That seems a great way off. It's like that cloud, Senator Carlson, that was way in the distance, no larger than a man's hand. But then it came closer and closer. We are talking about taking $10 million every year from the general fund. I'm going to check the names of those who vote for this bill. Then when they stand up here at budget time and they say, this agency I support needs more money, I'm going to say, well, you're not going to get it if I can stop it because you gave yours away. And when those who are going to speak for the university come here trying to get money for the university, I'm going to say, not if I can stop it. And to stop yours, I'll let these others know. If you don't support me in stopping this, then I'm going to stop yours too. And if I can't stop yours individually, I'll keep us on the budget forever. And you know the only way you can stop me? Cloture. And you know what happens when you cloture me? You take a vote on the budget bill as it exists at that moment, and you have to vote it across the board with all the things you may disagree with. I wasn't born yesterday. I'm not a fool, and I'm not stupid, and I know how to play this game. And I'm going to stop the raid on the Treasury one way or the other. If you let Calamity Jane steal this $10 million, she's not even listening. If you're going to let this raid be done today, then I've got to find a way to make up for it. Now, she's not going to say, we have to take money from someplace else to protect the integrity of the general fund. That'll be my responsibility. They know that I'm the garbage man. They know that I'll clean up the messes that my careless, inattentive, frightened colleagues will leave there. They say, well, Ernie will take care of that. We don't have to worry about it. We will be irresponsible. We will look good, but we know he'll save us because he's not afraid, and he will do what the state needs to have done. And they know that. And they're right. I will, although I shouldn't. But that's what I intend to do. And I'm going to do everything I can to stop this bill. Every motion that is allowed to me under the rules, I'm going to make it on this bill. Because I am as serious as a heart attack. Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I will.
Senator Chambers, I disagree with one of your analogies. First question, and this isn't meant to be funny, I'm asking you.
That's all right.
What relationship does the use of snuff have to do with...
At least for the purpose of driving, then there is a relationship because they will use the roads.
Okay, thank you. Third question, where should the money come from that's used to build state roads?
It should come from the general fund, in my opinion. There should be bonds sold to build state roads. And those bonds can either be revenue bonds, which I wouldn't want to see, but general obligation bonds. And you build your road program through the letting of general obligation bonds. That's one of the ways we should fund these roads, in my opinion.
Okay. Thank you for your answer there.
Mr. President, members of the legislature, I'd like to ask Senator Fisher a question so that something can be clarified for all of us, if she will answer.
Senator Fisher, would you yield to a question?
Certainly.
Senator Fisher, if you know, how long has this money, this sales tax portion on these leased vehicles, gone to the general fund, if you know?
I believe it's been since 1967.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Members of the legislature, this is not something that just happened yesterday. This money has been going to the general fund for nigh on to 40 years. Or is it more? 40 years. I'd like to ask Senator Carlson a question, and this might be unfair because he is a newbie, a tyro.
Senator Carlson, would you yield to a question?
Yes, I will.
Senator Carlson, if you know, what are the means by which the state can raise tax money? What may the state tax in order to raise tax money?
The state can tax income, and it can institute a sales tax.
Now, you're right. What source, which of those categories would this money fit into that we're talking about?
This would be sales tax.
So by doing this, we are diminishing the tax base available to the state. Would you agree? Come on, I was straightforward with you.
Yes or no, I would say yes.
Thank you, Senator Carlson.
Okay.
I'm following the method he used with me. Look, the state has only those two sources of revenue, so something which the state has been able to rely on for 40 years, has been a part of the budgeting process, is a part of the state's tax base, is now to be diminished. You are going to reduce the state's tax base. What are some of these groups called who said they want the state to diminish its own tax base? The Associated General Contractors, hardly concerned about the citizenry. And I can confirm what Senator Waldman said about how shabbily these state highways are built. Even Harold Anderson has written columns about how bad they are in Nebraska compared to the surrounding states where he travels, how bumpy they are. And if you drive between Omaha and Lincoln while they're doing their constructing, you can see what a poor job of road building has occurred in the past and is occurring now. But if the state is a sucker, bump its head, and that's what's been happening. All these people who talk about raiding the general fund and raising the gas tax so that the general contractors can have more money. And I understand they contribute to people's campaigns. When do they ever say there should be accountability and these roads should be built to meet a certain standard? They don't talk about that. Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce. Are they concerned about the people at large? No, businesses and those who are members of their organization. Nebraska New Car and Truck Dealers Association. And you can look at the list. The Nebraska Bankers Association, Nebraska Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Stores Association, League of Nebraska Municipalities, City of Omaha, Nebraska Association of County Officials. Of those political subdivisions, which one do you know has ever come here to say they want to raise more taxes? Some of them don't want to use the taxing authority that they have now. But they come to the state and say, we want to diminish your tax base, and the state senators like bobblehead dolls say, okay, we'll let you diminish the tax base. Then some of you are going to be whining when we get to the end of the session and the project you think should be funded is going to be left out in the cold because the money is not there. Think. Use your brains. Is the state, is the Highway Trust Fund the most important thing that we're dealing with this session? I don't think so. And this is not the only source they have of revenue. If they say, well, we just have to go someplace else, well, go someplace else. Let them go wherever they have to go. I'm not going to give any other suggestions. In talking to Senator Carlson, I mentioned general obligation bonds. There are probably states who use that as a means to build highways. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, thank you, Senator Stootman. Members of the legislature, a policy decision was made that this sales tax money would go into the general fund. Well, now that it's generating enough money to be of consequence, you're going to say, okay, now take it out and give it to somebody else. Are you going to say that with every source of taxation that the state has? Everything that's a part of the state's taxing base is going to be taken away and given to somebody else because it raises a substantial amount of money? I'd like to ask Senator Cruz a question because I'm nonplussed by something he said.
Senator Cruz, would you yield to a question?
Yes, I will.
Senator Cruz, you said there's a shortage of money that the state is facing now, correct?
In the construction of roads, yes.
Is there a shortage of money in the general fund for the things that people want to spend that money for?
No, not really.
So then every A bill that's before us and the governor's tax cuts can all be accommodated with the money that's available?
No, that would not be true.
So then there's a shortage somewhere, there's a shortfall somewhere.
We have a lot of demands, and this floor is going to have to face priorities.
And from what pot will the money come for funding these A bills that we're confronting?
The pressure on the budget is to hold down the increase. It's not because of a lack of availability of funds.
Where will the money come from that is going to fund these bills? Is there a repository where the state's money is found and we give that repository a name and it's from this pot that appropriations are made? What do we call that pot from which appropriations are made, if you know?
We have two pots like that. One is the general fund.
Let's take that one.
And then the other one is the reserve fund.
Now, is this money that we're talking about in 305 coming from the reserve fund?
No, it'd be coming from the general fund.
And you said that there is not enough money available in the general fund to fund all of the A bills that currently are pending, if I understood you correctly.
A bills and all requests are greatly more than the budget can accommodate.
And if $10 million is taken from that general fund, there is even less available for those A bills and requests. Is that true?
No, it's not.
Oh, so then you can reduce the amount of money in the general fund, and it does not make less money available for spending on these other things? Is that what you're saying?
The problem on the budget is that...
No, is that what you said? Because my time will run out, Senator Cruz.
The problem on the budget is we cannot increase it more than we have. It's not because there's not funds.
Thank you. Members of the legislature, what Senator Cruz just said makes no sense. Currently, there is not enough money available to be spent for all of these A bills and requests. If you take $10 million out of the general fund, that's not going to reduce the amount of money available. What kind of voodoo economics is that? You have $100 in your hand.
1 minute.
I take $10 from your hand, and that does not reduce the amount of money in your hand. Why, you talk about a flim-flam man. I wonder if Senator Cruz is a reincarnation of that fellow that I was talking about earlier. Members of the legislature, I'm going to do my job as I see it. And right now, my job is to stop the general fund from being raided. This is not a one-year thing. This goes on. This reduces the state's tax base. Doesn't that mean anything to anybody other than me? I know it means something to other senators because you've told me. But I hope it means something to enough of us to recognize the unwisdom of this bill. Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the legislature, I'm going to say it again and again and again. And I'll say it in different words this time in view of Senator Flim-Flam's last comment. He said that the members of the Appropriations Committee have agreed together not to increase the budget beyond a certain percentage. So what is that saying? They have decided you all are going to have only a certain amount of money available to spend. And they're going to try to stop you from going beyond that. Suppose you're somebody who will not be like me, aggressive, assertive, willing to play hardball, then your program gets cut. We can get rid of that senator because that senator's not going to put up a fuss. So you're out. And they keep cutting you off, and they know which ones are not going to fight hard. That doesn't mean their program does not have merit. It just means they don't have the oomph necessary. They don't have the juice to get it accepted and funded. That's the way things are done around here. They talk in these noble, altruistic terms, when underneath it all is a very utilitarian plan that says the strong will survive and be funded and the weak shall not. Who do you think they'd rather fight in here? Me or a neophyte? Who would they rather fight? They don't want to fight me because I will fight back and I will not quit. I will not be intimidated. I'm not trying to buy anything from anybody, and nobody can buy me. So they will walk light around me. What about some of the rest of you? You think they're going to treat you the same way? They don't have to. They can run all over you roughshod. I'm trying to save you while saving the integrity of the general fund. In effect, you're saying that the roads department is going to be funded from the general fund to the tune of at least $10 million without ever having to come to the legislature to justify it. And you all are the fiscal conservatives. You all are the ones who are concerned about the public. You're concerned about where tax money goes. I'd like to ask Senator Fisher a question because you all may think that I'm not telling the truth.
Senator Fisher, would you yield to a question?
Yes, I will.
Senator Fisher, on the chance that I've misunderstood this bill, at what point, if this bill is adopted, will this money automatically revert to the general fund, meaning that after a year or 2 or 3 years of it going to the Highway Trust Fund, it will then automatically shift back to the general fund? When will that happen without legislative action?
It will take legislative action, as with any change in tax revenue where it's designated to go, Senator.
So this is intended to be
1 minute.
ongoing.
I would certainly hope so.
Thank you. Members of the legislature, they don't have to come to the legislature again. They don't have to justify this additional money. They don't have a lot of oversight. Somebody was telling me about $100,000 or so the roads department is going to spend in western Nebraska looking at whether or not there ought to be an overpass, which will never be built anyway. But the $100,000 will be built, will be spent. Who even questions the Department of Roads? Who knows what the Department of Roads is spending? Who even cares? Well, I care about where they take that money from, and I don't want them to take it from the general fund. This is an appropriation forever without going through the budgeting or appropriation process. Why don't you say you're going to guarantee to Health and Human Services $10 million every year automatically? You wouldn't do it, but you fear this Highway Trust Fund and those who support it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Chambers and Senator Wallman. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion to indefinitely postpone? Seeing no lights on, Senator Fisher, Senator Chambers, you are recognized to close on your motion to indefinitely postpone.
Thank you. But, Mr. President, to show you what a gentleman I am around here, if Senator Fisher had changed her mind and wanted to speak in favor of killing this bill, I would let her have my closing. That's how generous a fellow I can be on occasion. But I said I'm going to fight this bill, and I'm going to. You know why I don't have to be afraid? Because there's nothing anybody can give me, and there's nothing anybody can take from me. What can they do in this legislature to hurt me? Nothing. Nothing. But I know what I promised to do when I came here. My title is state senator. My first responsibility is to my duties as a state senator. If my responsibility was to the city of Omaha, I would have run for the Omaha City Council. If I felt my first duty is to Douglas County, I would have gotten on the county board. My view is broader than that. And this legislature and this state, whether you all or they know it or not, are lucky to have somebody like me. Somebody willing to do these things that need to be done, but which nobody wants to touch. And will you be crying as we go further? Oh, yes, you will be crying. You will be whining. Your project is not going to get money. And then you're going to say, what did I do? Oh, woe is me. You have a chance to make a decision now. If you don't pass this bill, you're not going to hurt the Highway Trust Fund. If you pass it, you're going to shrink the state's tax base. You rural, you conservative, you fiscal conservatives, the others of you who try to tell your constituents how stingy and tight-fisted you are when it comes to the state money, you're going to, at one fell swoop, not only take $10 million from the general fund, but you're giving that to a state agency forever. They don't have to face the budget committee. They don't have to justify that to anybody. You don't see that as an abdication of your responsibility? I don't call myself a fiscal conservative, but I call myself a responsible state legislator. And I'm going to hear some of you, as we proceed, stand up here and wave your conservative credentials. Yeah, because it doesn't cost any money. But when it comes to kowtowing to, pandering to, being a sycophant for those powerful special interest groups, that's when you will fold. All of a sudden, you don't stand up and do a whole lot of talking. But I will, and I intend to stay on this bill, and I will not get tired. I'm like one of those athletes in a contest where the longer the contest goes, the stronger, more enthusiastic I become, and the higher my energy level is. Most 70-year-old geezers, they can't stand up all day long. You keep them on their feet doing anything for 15 minutes, and they're huffing, puffing, wheezing, and blowing. They're not going to run up and down the stairs, have young people getting out of the way. Wish I could do that. So you think that I'm a typical 70-year-old geezer and that I'm going to get tired, that I'm just blowing smoke, that I'm bluffing, that I'm shooting blanks, and that I will not use every motion that I can and that I choose to use to fight this bill. If that's what you think, you've got another thing coming, and it behooves me to demonstrate.
1 minute.
Do I care what happens with the rest of the session? Because I see the speaker over there looking a little thoughtful. No, I don't care. Y'all care about what y'all care about? I care about what I care about. I care about the general fund's integrity, and I'm going to fight to protect it. Suppose not another bill passes, including mine. That happens in the legislature. It happens in other legislatures. Except that I don't get discouraged. I don't quit. I have a primary responsibility. And protecting the integrity of the general fund is one of those primary objectives that I have. What do people often say is the most important thing we do as a legislature? Some will say to build a budget. Budget has to do with the expenditure of money. That is tied into the general fund. They're going to talk about the budget, then let the general fund be raided. Why, that's preposterous. But others may not see it my way. So it's up to me. Thank you, Mr. President. I will ask for a call of the House. Thank you. Mr. President, members of the legislature, the reason I was not voting is because the only way a person can reconsider is to be voting on the prevailing side or not voting. So I wanted to see what the vote was going to be before I was not voting. And I'm going to deliver on what I promised to do. So you all may have a long day here in front of you. What about lunch? Because we're going to work through lunch anyway. Well, I don't eat lunch anyway. So you all will just join me. And for Senator Friend's information, Captain Lunch Hunter will have to take his hat off and decide to just stay here and skip that lunch. That's what they consider senators. Lunch hunters, spongers, moochers, always on the take, looking for something free. Why do you think they invite you all to all these dinners? You think they do it because they like you? They wouldn't ridicule you behind your back if they liked you. They wouldn't call you out sometime and talk bad to you and holler at you and point at you if they liked you. They think they can buy you with a meatloaf sandwich and a chicken dinner. They wouldn't come up and offer you $1,000. First of all, it wouldn't take that much to buy you. But that is too blunt even for the people around here. So they're nice to you. And whereas they couldn't buy you for $1,000 straight out, they can get your favorable attention with a meatloaf sandwich and a chicken dinner, and you feel forever obliged to them. But that doesn't work with me. The rules allow me to do what I'm doing, and I intend to do it. And I'm going to compile a record as I do it. Senator Cruz has already told you all what is going to happen as far as the Appropriations Committee is concerned. But here's what Senator Cruz may have forgotten. You think they've got the powerhouses on the Appropriations Committee now that they used to have? Absolutely not. You think there are people on that Appropriations Committee because they have particular expertise in budgeting and matters of finance? No. They wanted to be there and they got there. That's the way things are done in the legislature, and it's why I've never been bound by anything that came out of the Appropriations Committee. They're just a senator like I am. Or let me say it a different way. They're senators with no more authority than I have as a senator. And I will assert mine, and I will assert myself, and I will challenge the Appropriations Committee when I think what they're doing is inappropriate. When Senator Werbine was the chair, when Senator Peterson was the chair, they had understanding, and they knew how to strike a compromise, usually with me. Because first of all, what I would offer was eminently reasonable, and they should have done it in the first place, but they were afraid. So they knew I would come forth and create a set of circumstances where it could be done, and it had to be done because the time would have been taken and the budget would have been held up. So I'm the fall guy and the bad guy, and I don't mind. Things have to be done, and somebody has to do it. And I'm going to do what I think I ought to do. So what I can get from you, if I can't get your vote, is some of your time. And you're going to see more and more days like this given over to me during the session. When I decide to take the session, it becomes mine. And if people get angry, do you think it makes me any difference? No. Why would they get upset? Because there are things they want to do. Well, why should I care more about what they want to do than they care about what I want to do? I don't hear any answers. I don't need an answer. This is a bad bill. This is bad policy. I'd like somebody who supports this bill to tell me who exercises oversight when it comes to the Department of Roads. Who? Where is the quality control? I would ask Senator Harms, but he hasn't been here very long, so I can't blame him. I ought to ask Senator Copeland because he was a superintendent and they know everything. Oh, he's nodding yes. I'd like to ask Senator Copeland a question.
Senator Copeland, would you yield to a question?
I would love to.
Senator Copeland, if you know, who exercises or ensures quality control in highway building in this state?
I do not know.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Senator Fisher a question.
Senator Fisher, would you yield to a question?
Senator
Yes.
Fisher, which official is charged with quality control over highway building in this state?
I can't tell you right offhand who that would be, Senator Chambers.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. And for Senator Copeland, neither can I. I don't think anybody can, because I don't think there is such a person. They do what they want to do. If they decide that they want to investigate whether some utility poles are too close to the highway, they spend the money and hire somebody to do it. And who questions them? Nobody. Nobody. And if you see all these cones on the highway narrowing the thoroughfare to one lane, who asks why that is being done? And who made the decision? Nobody, because everybody's trained to go along with whatever the Department of Roads decides to do. They could do it to have fun and say, we're going to show how much we control this state. Let's put some cones out here, and we will shut off the middle lane. Because now they've got some stretches of I-80, especially between Omaha and Lincoln, with 3 lanes. We'll shut off the middle lane and make those suckers go on the inside lane or the outside lane, and they'll do it without asking a question, and they will never contact the Department of Roads to ask, why are these cones here? Why is the center lane closed when I don't see any workers out here? I don't see any equipment out here. I don't see anything being done to the road. They're not striping it. They're not fixing any potholes because there are none. Why are the cones there? Nobody is going to ask. Nobody. And y'all going to sit around here and give a perpetual appropriation called something else to the Department of Roads, and they never have to come before the legislature again. What agency would not like that? You're not willing to do it with other agencies. Senator Cruz and others are going to be inspecting things with a microscope on that Appropriations Committee until they get tired or until the biggies come. Then these big things go through. You know what they do, Senator Carlson? I can't take credit for this being original. They strain at a gnat and they swallow a camel. They can get their minds around that gnat, but a camel, So somebody comes up with a program that might cost $300,000, or we don't have the money for that. Department of Roads says we want $10 million in perpetuity, and the legislature says, okay, you got it. We're just thankful that you didn't ask for $20 million. You heard that song, whatever Lola wants, Lola gets. Lola could take some lessons from the Nebraska Department of Roads. You just roll over and give it up. All you conservatives, all you fiscal conservatives, Senator Friend, sometimes he gets on this floor and speaks with his very authoritative sounding voice. Sometimes he will even pound the table, or he sounds like he is, even if he's not. And then, when time comes to do something that manifests responsibility, he reminds me of one of Aesop's fables. The people were in this little village, and there was a huge mountain. And one day, there was a great going in the ground. The ground shook. That's where shake, rattle, and roll came from.
1 minute.
The mountain itself rattled and rolled from side to side, and everybody was just standing in great fear. They offered sacrifices, they prayed, and nothing stopped all of this turmoil. Then the bottom of the mountain opened up, and out stepped a mouse. That's what the legislature is, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing when it comes to the big things and the responsible things. That I, paraphrasing Richard Nixon, I am not a mouse. Thank you, Mr. President. Some of the issues that I have in mind when time comes for funding. Who on this floor would just say, we're going to give $10 million to a program to benefit children? That's not going to happen. The Education Committee, since Senator Howard mentioned that committee, I will tailgate on her having mentioned it and say the following. The committee has been told that by the governor that changes need to be made, issues need to be addressed, but there is not an inexhaustible supply of money, and if the plan is too expensive, it's not going to go. You think he'd veto this bill? No. Who wants it? The general contractors.
1 minute.
People who will contribute to his campaigns. But when it comes to children, whether it's their health needs or education, the first thing raised is the amount of money. The amount of money available is not limitless. Do you hear any of the senators getting exercised about that like they are over these roads? Not at all. Some will, but the rest will go along. Then in years to come, when they look back and see what a blunder they made, they'll say, well, I just didn't know then. Those were the decisions I made when I was unaware of their consequences. This bill should not pass. Perhaps it will. But if it does, it will do so after I have waged what I consider the kind of battle that those supporting this bill should have to win. These kind of bills are not just going to slide through this committee, this legislature, as long as I'm here. Thank you, Mr. President.